Okay. All right. So this is part of the dilutive, Chapter 16, dilutive securities and earnings per share. We're going to look now at stock warrants and issuing stock warrants for along with other securities. So let's take a look at that. What are stock warrants? Stock warrants are certificates entitling the holder to acquire shares of stock at a certain price within a stated period. Okay, so in other words, it gives me the option to purchase or to acquire shares of stock at perhaps a guaranteed price. So I could have stock warrants that allow me 3 years from now to purchase stock of GE for $8 a share, and maybe 3 years later, when I'm ready to buy it at $8 a share, it might be trading at $12 a share. So it gives me the option to buy it at $8 a share, which is a lower price than what the market price is, and therefore I have a gain on these options. So we usually would offer this as some sort of incentive. You see this a lot with companies that offer this as some form of compensation, as we see in line item 3, to executives and employees. We also see this as to make maybe a security more attractive. Okay, so we offer this to really just bring some sort of incentive in this conversion process. Line 2 is existing stockholders have a preemptive right to purchase common stock first. We talked about that last chapter about what it means to have a preemptive right. So take a look at that in chapter 15, that terminology. Okay, all right. So stock warrants issued with other securities, basically, they're long-term options to buy common stock at a fixed price. Generally, life of warrants is 5 years. Occasionally, it could be 10 years. We see proceeds allocated between the two securities, allocations based on fair market values, and we use 2 methods of allocation. So it came back to us. Chapter 15, we talked about this. Proportional method and incremental method. And we said that we use these methods. Notice that when we talk about proportional method, what do we say? These are percentages or ratios, right? So we look at these ratios. When it comes to incremental, we usually have one but not the other, okay? And we'll talk more in detail about that. We covered that a little bit in chapter 15 about what would happen if we have to use a proportional method versus incremental method when it comes to the value of stocks and acquiring that, okay? All right, so the proportional method is determine the value of the bonds without the warrants and the value of the warrants. So we know one and we know other, but at the conversion, we have to figure that out. So the proportional method allocates the proceeds using the proportion of the 2 amounts. So we know those 2 amounts, but notice it's based on fair value, okay? So the proportional part of it is based on fair value, and then it helps us to determine what these overall values of the warrants and the bonds, and also how we record in the book. So it'd probably be easier just to show you an example. So let's take a look at the next slide here, okay? Okay, so we have Margolf Corp issued 2,000 $1,000 bonds at $101, okay? Each bond was issued with one detachable stock warrant. After issuance, the bonds were selling in the market at $98 and the warrants had a market value of $40. So we want to use a proportional method to record the issues of the bonds and warrants. So remember, when we record the allocation, we record based upon the market value. So notice 98% and 40 is also the market value of the warrants and also the bonds, okay? So that gives me my proportion. So if I have 2,000 bonds and I also have 2,000 warrants, I can know what my numbers are and I can determine what the value is. So my bonds are 2,000 times $1,000, but remember the market price is at 98%. So that gives me 1.96 million, okay? Then I have warrants 2,000 at $40. That gives me $80,000. The total amount is going to give me $2,040,000. Okay, so I take that $2,040,000 and basically I create my percentage based off the total fair market value. So if the total fair market value is 2.04 million, $80,000 divided by $2,040,000 is going to give me roughly 4% or 3.93%. Okay, so looking at that, I know how much did I receive. Well, the money that I actually received was $2,020,000. Okay, so I know that I got $2,020,000 basically after the issuance. And so how do I determine that? So I look at my $2,020,000 that I received, okay, and I take 96% of that and I take 4% of that, and that gives me my allocation. Okay, now we have a little thing called discount here, and we're gonna talk about that in a second. Okay, so the next slide is going to look like this. We start recording this now. The cash received was $2,020,000. Okay, how do we know that we have $2,020,000? Well, this is how we know. 1,000 bonds at 101. Okay, so that is the value of the cash that we should receive. So we're going to record this cash of $2,020,000. Then we have a discount of the bonds payable. The discount is basically 1.94 million less the $2 million of the face value. That gives me my discount. Okay. Then I have a bonds payable of $2 million. That's the face value that I issued. And I have a paid in capital stock warrants of $79,216. So really, when we think about this, this number was based upon our percentage, our proportional method. Okay, this number was a proportional method less the face value. Okay, the cash was also given. How do we know it was given? Because that was what we issued the bonds for. We issued the bonds at 101, so there's a premium. Okay, so we say there's a premium, but really we have to include that there's warrants to be valued as well. And so when we account for the warrants, we actually are really issuing it at a discount. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at one more example here. We assume each warrant can be exercised to buy one share of common stock par value of Margolf Inc. for $30 per share. If investors exercise all 2,000 warrants, one warrant per one share of stock, Margolf makes the following entry. Okay, so we know that there is 2,000 warrants that are issued. And how do we know that? We know that based upon the original problem, which is one stock warrant for one bond. So that gives us 2,000. Okay? So we know that that's 2,000 warrants, and we can exercise one warrant per share. If we exercise all of those, we're going to receive some cash, right? Well, how do we receive the cash? The purchaser of the bond, if they decide to exercise the warrant, then when they exercise it, they're going to convert the bond will convert to stock. So now they receive the stock, but they have to pay money for it. And so we receive cash of 2,000 warrants for $30. That's 60 grand. We have a paid in capital in excess for stock warrants. Remember, it was 79,216. Where did that number come from? Remember, we have this number right here. Okay? So we have to retire it. Or not retire it, we have to reverse it. So we are going to reverse this number, 79,216. Then We also have common stock, 2,000 times $5. What is that? That is par value, right? So the common stock is issued at par value, and guess what our plug is? Our plug is going to be the difference, which is paid in capital in excess of par, common stock, and that is going to be $129,216, which is the difference, okay? So when we think about this, this is given based off of the last part of the problem, okay? This is given, and then this is really our plug, okay? So when we go over it, it's not difficult to do it together. It's a matter of figuring out, to memorize what we have to do, all right? So there's steps involved in the process, and what we said in the beginning is you have to determine the proportional method. Based off the proportional method, you have to determine the proportions based off of fair market value, and then from there we can determine what our givens are and what our plug should be, okay, based off of these percentages that we can use.